Good morning, viewers. We're about to have a late night session with Adrian, who's on the other side of the world, but he's decided to give us some of his time in the middle of the night to do this. We're going to have a look at error handling, some of the things that you probably thought you knew, but maybe you didn't. So, over to Adrian.
Thank you, Kent. I'm going to start by saying you can see on the screen in front of you a lot of text explanation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to include this module. I'm not going to talk it through now, but I will include this module so that anyone with interest can read through this. It's a bit like a help page. It's not the official one, but it's a bit different. It's presented in words that I think will be easier for people to understand. So that's that part, and you're welcome to have this module after I've finished with it. I'm going to start with this function here. This procedure, I should say. It's not a function. It's a subroutine. And in all of these, I put a stop at the front so I don't have to worry about breakpoints. This will start the breakpoint part of it for me. And all of this code is designed to be run step by step so you can see what's happening. Okay, right. This one is test OE resume. So on error, resume. Okay. Now, when I do in the error handler, before we go in there, you'll notice that there's a Boolean at the top, BLN not first, which is static. So as soon as this is run the first time, it'll set it, and after that, it'll remember that it's been run before. So I may have to do some resetting. And when I say resetting, I'm referring to this particular button up here, which completely resets the whole project, and anything it remembers is forgotten. So,
All right,
start.
So explain that to us. So you're putting the Boolean not first so that we only throw an error once, and because it's static, it remembers the next time you go in until you hit that stop button, and that clears it.
Yes. The stop button is actually called a reset button. It doesn't just stop, it resets the whole project.
I feel enlightened.
It looks like a stop button, because like with most play controls, if you hover over it, it'll tell you it's reset. You lose all remembered stuff. Even your global, I'm going to quickly cheat and go to the top here. You might have global variables, which I do. I possibly should have introduced these before. LNG0, I'm going to set to be 0. When we try and do a divide by 0, it's going to say, oh, yeah. And LNG work is just something I put the results into. I don't really use it for much other than that.
So the reset will reset your, in this case, module level variables as well.
Yes, all module level variables. It won't reset values that you have in an open form.
Or temp vars.
Or what?
Temp vars.
Or temp vars. As far as I understand, I don't play with those very much, but I don't believe that they get reset. The reset button. It's essentially your VBA project. It's not the access it resets, it's the VBA project. So this is true in any VBA project you use, Excel, Access, Word, whatever. If you press the reset, it will reset all items that are set up in VBA, basically. Okay, so I am going to say F8, go to the next line, and you'll notice it's printed as you would expect. And what we're going to do with this, by the way, Kent, is we're going to keep monitoring what is in as we go, so that you can see when you do a resume that has been cleared afterwards. Even though you haven't said .clear, there's a method within the object which is .clear, and you can reset it that way, but it gets automatically reset whenever you do an on error or a resume. And we'll see that as we go through. What I want to do here is I want to illustrate two different ways of handling this. So I set this Boolean not first. It starts obviously as false, as any Boolean would that isn't set. And then when I set it to true, that means next time the error happens, it gets found, it will trigger different code. It'll be handled differently. So this time through, I'm going to crash, and it's going to say, if not bool and not first, and of course it won't be because it's the first time through, that's going to say TOER, test on error resume, that's this procedure, and the error number of 11, which is divided by 0. Then we're going to say, right, for next time, we want this to be true. We don't want to come through this bit next time, we want to go through the other bit. And we're going to say, resume error 1. Beforehand, about the comments at the top explain this, but when you trigger an error and it goes into an error handler, it goes into a special mode, which I call error handler mode, which means that the error handling for that procedure, or one of the things it means, is that the error handling is suspended. So up until that point, another error would have been handled by VBA because this was called from the immediate pane. And so there's no higher level procedures. We'll get onto that in more detail later. This error handler, even though it says on error go to error handler, while it's handling that error, that is suspended. So if during that error handler it hits another error, it won't know how to handle it. It'll fire it back up to VBA default handler.
That starts when you do something that does the on error go to.
When you trigger an error. Yes.
Okay.
When you trigger an error, this line here, if not bool and not first, when that goes, the error handling, the triggering of an error handling has been suspended. Okay. And it won't be re-enabled until it hits a resume. Okay. And now the next command I'm going to hit is a resume. And now error handling is working again.
So that's a resume label. So it goes back to error 1, but that's a label. So you obviously go to the line just after.
And that would be the same as just saying resume. But I've tried to do labels. I'm hoping that makes it easier for people to follow.
Well, resume would have gone to the next line, but...
No, resume next would have gone to the next one. Resume would have gone to the same. And we'll see that later. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to hit this again. I'm going to Debug.Print, and you'll see that after the resume, even though I didn't say error.clear, and when it was in that error handler, you could see that error number 11 was there. I didn't clear it. I just said resume. And the resume has reset the object to blank. Number of 0, description of blank. Now I'm going to hit this same error again, and it's going to go to the error handler because that's enabled. However, this is where it differs. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to run this Debug.Print, and it's going to say the same 11, except this one, instead of being a resume, it's a GoTo, because the following thing is GoTo error 1. Now, when I do this, so far fine. I'm going to print this. Notice that object has not been reset. Because as far as VBA is concerned, we are still in the middle of the error handler, which is why when I now hit another error, it's going to crash. It's basically going to be handled by VBA or whatever higher level it's got that is available. In this case, it's VBA, and it's going to say, I can't handle that. You haven't handled that. Your code is that on error go to error handler is still alive, but it's suspended because you're still in error handling mode.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I'm going to handle it myself, VBA. Now, at this point, I'm going to say end. If you say end, that is the same as doing a reset button. If I were to run this again, it would behave the same way. It would go through the bool and not first being false first, and then set to true, etc., etc. If I were to allow this to finish without resetting, next time I tried this, because I've already set bool and not first, it would remember that. Okay. Hopefully that is that illustrated those differences between the resume after an error handler, and if you can go to the same point, exactly the same part of the code, but it behaves differently because one is still thinks it's in the error handler and the other thinks it's finished the error handler. Therefore, they behave differently. Okay, so that's that one. The next one I'm going to do, I'm going to move that off the screen, and I'm going to say, after OER resume, test no exit. This is where, instead of doing an exit sub or an exit function if you're in a function procedure, the ordinary code has got an error handler at the bottom. Let me just start this. If I write this, right, so we go to the right place, you can see the code I'm talking about. Okay, so instead of the after error one, we get back here, you'll watch this, it doesn't do an exit sub. It's got the error handler code, which should be separate. It's designed to be separate. You only go there if there's an error. You don't go there when it just drops through. However, because we haven't put an exit sub here, it will just drop through. And we'll see funny things go on. We've seen this before when it tries to do a resume when it's not even handling an error. So why is it hitting a resume? Okay, so step by step. So we come in, we start off, unsurprisingly, with error 0. That means there's no error. Okay, we hit an error. Bam. Remember that error handler, GoTo error handler, is suspended at this point. Okay, so I'm going to print that, and the error description is division by 0. Resume next is fine. That's great. I go to the code after the error, and now, because I've said resume, that is going to give me a 0. The error object is clear, it's fine, everything's dandy. Except now, we've dropped into the error handling code, which was never really designed to be dropped into. It's only supposed to be triggered. So what happens? Well, we hit this again, and instead of being TNE division by 0, it's TNE blank, because there's nothing in the description, there is no error. However, this is where we hit resume next. Now, resume next is funny, because we're not in an error handler. This is the error handler code being treated like ordinary code. So what happens? It triggers the error handler. In a second, we'll see why. It shows that the resume without error is what caused this error handler to be run, even when that resume without error is within the error handler. And it's gone back to resume next, and it's done that. That works fine this time. And now we're not in error handling mode anymore, but we finished. But you'll see, you're never really supposed to let error handling code be got to in any way except by being triggered by an error. This is an example. Go to -1. This one does an exit sub. Okay. Are you happy that that's illustrated what happens when you don't put an exit before your error handler code?
Yes, so we've seen the difference between when you hit a line that says resume something, if it's in error handling mode or
Yep.
state, and if it's not, it doesn't like it.
That's exactly true. I'm now going to get an extra line and test the next one on here, which is call test GoTo -1. Now, we discussed this in fair length before. This is the on error GoTo -1, which everyone seems to feel should probably have been implemented as not on error at all, but as just resume here. So here we're at on error test GoTo -1. Start with printing the error number. Always starts at 0. That's how it should do. And now I'm going to trigger an error. Jumps into my error handler. And I'm going to say, right, I'm in the error handler, TGMO, test GoTo -1, and just division by 0. Fine. On error GoTo -1. This is the thing. We don't often see that. It's very rare to find this in code. However, I'm going to press that. The error object has been cleared, but also we're in normal mode, and the on error GoTo error handler has been re-enabled. It was suspended, but now it's re-enabled. But if I go here, so you'll see that error has been cleared. That's fine. And we go to continue. We couldn't resume continue here, because if we said resume, it would crash with an error 20. Resume without error. Okay, but I can go there. That says continues in normal mode. I'm still 0, and then I exit sub. That is how on error GoTo -1 works. It's a weird one, very unusual, but I'm sure people have the imagination to find ways that make it make sense.
So instead of having the on error GoTo's -1, if you'd just done an error.clear, you would have cleared the error, but you would still be in error handling mode?
Yes, exactly. I could very quickly show you that. I know that wasn't in the original code, but if I were to say, dot clear, okay. So if we run this again, so I'm going to put a double pipe there to separate out what we did last time from what we're doing this time. So run this again, stop. That's the 0. Crashes. Prints that with the error description. All the same so far. This time we're saying er.clear. Er number, again, is going to be 0. Go to continue. It doesn't show any difference here. If we were to say...
But if you were to go back up to that line where you throw an error again...
Yes. Because we're in suspended...
So
it's suspended on error GoTo error handler.
But we're still in error mode.
Yes.
All right. So if we throw an error again, yeah, okay. So we're throwing an error while we're in error mode, which goes to the VBA error handler.
Which goes to whatever is at the next higher level. In this case,
next higher level.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens when you stack errors. So you have call functions or procedures at a lower level. You call a procedure, and if that procedure doesn't itself have an error handler, then it will go up to the next level, the one that called it, and see if that's got an error handler. And if that has, it'll handle the error.
Oh, okay. There's all these fine little distinctions.
There's a fair bit to remember. It's all explained, hopefully clearly, at the top. But I don't think you want me just to sit there and read out what I've written down for a recording. People might as well read it themselves. At this point, I'm just going to stop that. I'm going to do a reset again. We did finish how that worked normally. So the next thing to test or to show is call test resume. What this is going to do is show the difference between a resume and a resume next. We were discussing earlier about how could it make any sense for there to be a resume, which is go back to the same line that caused the error and run it again. And this will illustrate one example of that. Okay, it's probably not very common. Another example is open this file. Oh, couldn't find the file. Oh, do you want to try again? Yes, do a resume. And in the meantime, the operator's put the file in the right place, or renamed it, or done whatever it needs for that file to be there. Okay, so that's one example of why you might resume. if it didn't work the first time, the file isn't there, well, put it there and then try again.
But you'd
Okay.
really only resume after you've addressed the problem that caused the original error. Otherwise, you'll just
That's,
go around in circles.
well, that can be done by the operator, as what I've just illustrated, or as we'll see here in the code.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be, yes, but fundamentally you would only ever use resume if in the meantime you think, you'd made an attempt to correct the error.
In this instance, right,
Uh-huh.
you've got in the error handle, you'd say if the error is divided by 0, then we
Yep,
change the variable to be 1 instead of 0.
it won't fail. Exactly. Shall we do that visibly? Because I'll go through
Yeah.
step by step. Okay, but you're right. You've anticipated exactly what's going to happen. It's just an illustration. So error number, start with 0, fine, bang. We are now go to error handler, so that's going to go to the error handler. And again, boolean not first. First time through, this is test resume, resume. And we're going to say it's not the first time anymore. And we're going to tweak LNG0 so it doesn't cause a crash. And then I'm going to resume and it's going to go back to exactly the same point, the point it errored on before. Then I'm going to say, and do you know, it hasn't errored this time. And the error object, the object, I should say, is now clear. And now I'm going to correct that problem. Otherwise, everywhere else we try is going to fail, which would be messy. That's what happened earlier. Right. And then we'll try again. And this time, it's not the first time through. We're going to do the resume next one. This time, we're going to say resume next. Because of the resume, it's corrected we're out of error handling mode and the object has been cleared. This is an illustration of how you should finish off a procedure if you've got your error handler code at the bottom, which most people like to do. They like to put it at the bottom and then not ever run it by putting an exit sub there. Okay, so that's that one. And the last one is test pull stack.
Oh, this is what I've been looking forward to.
Yeah, sorry I left this to last. I know it's probably
No.
the most
We've
interesting
got the
part,
basics first.
but it used some of the basics, and I wanted to illustrate some of the basics before I got into this so that it would make better sense. Right, okay, I'm going to start here, and I've got a bunch of routines here. This is the top one called test stack. I've got test stack 2 and test stack 3. Okay, these are the routines that are used in this. This comment at the top is interesting. When I first set it up, this was going to be the first thing that anyone saw and read, like an introduction. This code is designed to allow the user to trace through it sequentially and see exactly what happens at every step. That's been true of everything we've done so far. So we're going to start here with on error resume next. And this won't be the bit that does the stacking. Okay, this is just because we haven't really seen this much before. Simple on error resume that next. What that means is every time you hit an error, just go to the next line or the next statement. I forget which way it is, but not many people use multiple statement lines. That's the colon. What I've got in the immediate pane, and that is this bit down here, what I've got there would actually run because you can separate different statements, commands, with the colon, and it will just run them sequentially. It's not a good idea, certainly not a good idea to put in your live code because it's obscure and hard to read, but there we go. So on error resume next, we'll just go to the very next line, and this is where I start, set LNG0 to 0. Explicitly, it defaults to that anyway. So error 1. Oh, that's interesting. Just crashed. No, I haven't crashed. I've just hit an error, but it's just gone on to the next line, exactly as it said on the tin. But error number is not 0. So I'm going to print the description. That's not supposed to be there. Supposed to come there. So let's continue from there. And then say er.clear. And then I print a number, and it's 0. That's great. Wonderful.
So we're
That is,
still in the on error resume next mode.
we are at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're about to change because we're about to say on error, go to error handler. Now, in the comments above, I've explained you can only have one active error handler enabled at a time, at most, because sometimes they're suspended, sometimes you have nothing, but you can only have one at a time. However, you can have multiple error handlers in a procedure. They just wouldn't be an effective at the same time. Thank you. Right. On error, go to error handler. This will replace any on error command that you put in, apart from on error go to -1, which is an exception. It behaves strangely. It's always an exception to pretty much every rule. Every other on error command will replace any currently active on error handler. So on error resume next is currently enabled. When I say on error go to error handler, it will replace on error resume next. On error go to 0, I'll bring this in. I don't know whether I've done that very much. On error go to 0 means don't have an error handler for this procedure. So reset any error handling for this procedure.
So that the VBA error handler would come back into play.
Or any higher level error handler.
Ah, okay. So that affects the higher levels as well.
No, it affects only the current level. So on error go to error handler, I'll show you in a minute. Actually, I think in test stack 3, the lower level one, I think I do use on error go to 0. That ensures that the handler at this level, the top level, gets called into play. Hopefully you'll see that. It'll play out and you'll see that. Okay. So here we go. We're saying on error go to error handler and call test stack 2. And without further ado, we'll go to test stack 2. And this isn't a very interesting one. All it does is it goes and it says, right, go down to test stack 3 then. And that's because we want to see that however many levels down you go, if you trigger an error which isn't handled at your level, it will go up and look at every level above until it finds one that is triggerable. Doesn't just have to be the one above, it could be any number of levels above. And if it finds that there's none in all of that, it will go to the VBA handler. Okay. So call test stack 3. On error, resume next. So we do have an on error go to 0 here. We also have on error, resume next, which we've dealt with before. So we're going to come in here. Error number is 0. As you'd expect, we haven't triggered an error yet. However, bam, we just did. It went on to the next line. Debug.Print error number, and that is now 11, which is a divide by 0, as you'll know. Right, so we trigger this again, and it goes again, 11. Now we say on error go to 0. This clears error handling at this level, okay? But you'll know that it also clears the object. And now we'll do basically exactly the same code, but this time instead of it being under on error resume next, it's under on error go to 0. So this will cause an error at test stack 2, but test stack 2 doesn't have an error handler, so it will then go to the test stack itself, the error handler of that. And it's on the screen at the moment. It's gone right up there.
So
Okay.
it threw you to test stack 2 first, although we didn't see that. But because 2 doesn't have any error handling, it then goes straight up to the next level.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I was thinking error on error go to 0 always took you back to the VBA error handler, but no, okay.
The general ruling is that any error handler that you have will handle errors at any lower level. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the VBA error handler has a very similar remit. It handles everything at a lower level, but only things that aren't already handled by those levels. So if you've got a handler at your top level, it'll handle it. If you haven't, it'll throw it up to VBA.
Okay.
Every level, anytime you hit an error, it will go, have I got an error handler? Yes, no. Yes, go to the error handler. No, go up to the next level. Have I got an error handler? Yes, go to the error handler. No, go up to the next level. It just perpetuates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we are now going to hit this code. I'm going to show you up here. That is the test stack error handler, which is why you see the TS followed by 11, which is the divide by zero error. So even though we're in here and this procedure has not done a divide by zero, the test stack hasn't done it. It's test stack 3 that did it, but it's been handled here. And I'm going to say resume next, but resume next doesn't resume in a lower level thing. It resumes next in this level, because as far as it's concerned, the call to test stack 2, which is the line above the, so this line here, I'm going to breakpoint for a second, just to show it up. That's what it sees as having triggered the error. Okay, so resume next goes to the line afterwards. And because you've said resume, that error number is going to show as 0.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then it's going to call test stack 2 again. And this time it's going to behave differently, obviously. Well, this one isn't going to behave differently, the other one is. So we come into test stack 3 again. We're on resume next again, and we show 11 and 11. We'll go to 0. And that's going to crash again, all the way up to there. So then we say resume next.
Okay, so you can have a main function that calls off little subroutines, and
Yep.
if any of those subroutines fail, you just handle the error in the main one, and you can skip over the ones that failed, yeah, and just handle the errors in the main. Yeah, that's useful.
Essentially, think of it like this. If you see a line like this, see a divide by 0, clearly that line has had an error.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. However, if you see a line like this, okay, goes down into that procedure, if it handles the error, you won't even know about it, and it will just finish and it will carry on as normal. However, if it throws up an error, as far as this procedure is concerned, what has caused that error is the call test stack 2. Yeah, it's run that and it's returned an error. And so it's handled it in the same way it would as if any other command in the procedure had triggered that error.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how that works, basically.
Okay, so I can see how this would be useful. So, for example, if you had a main procedure that wanted to do something with several files, and you had a procedure that did all that with the file. So you call that sub-procedure and you pass it the file name. The file doesn't exist or something goes wrong. It comes back up to the error handler in the main one, goes to the next file. If that's okay, it's fine, it moves on. If the next one fails, it comes back to the error handler and you can do resume next. Yeah. So you've got all the error handling in the main one. That would be nice for that sort of situation.
That's why whenever I do something like that, you're absolutely right, yes. But that's why whenever I want something like some code, you can only get information by causing something to crash. It will either crash or not. So if you want to know if a property exists for an object, if you access it and it doesn't exist, it crashes. So what I would tend to do there is instead of trying to access it and say, like, on error resume next and change all my error handling within a procedure, I would call a function or call a procedure, call a subroutine maybe, but I would call a function. And what that would do is, say I wanted the value of a property, but I didn't want to risk crashing. I'd call a function to do that. And the function would handle that crashing and would return an empty string or a zero, whatever. It wouldn't let me know that it had crashed. It would simply give me the value if it found it, or a default value if it didn't. And it would handle the possibility of an error.
Okay, so if you've got a subform, a routine in a subform that's trying to get a value from the parent, but you haven't opened it as a subform, so it doesn't have a parent and would therefore error, yeah, you do it there.
You could put it, separate it into a procedure,
Yep.
such that when it crashes, it's only within that procedure that it knows that there's a problem, and you only have to have like one on error resume next, or whatever you want to do, however you handle it.
Okay.
And that doesn't affect your main code, because your main code doesn't want on error here, there, this, that, and all the rest of it, doing different things all over the place. It gets messy.
You really only want to skip over the subroutine that failed.
Exactly.
And
And it might not fail. It will either fail or not fail. But if it fails internally, and it handles it so that when you get the result, when it finishes, you don't care whether it's failed or not. You get what you need.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
So that is pretty much it. And unless you have any questions.
That's brilliant. I really didn't quite understand how those errors bubbled up, particularly when you do the on error go to zero, that it just goes up to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. If it doesn't find one, then it will go to the VBA error handler.
Yes. If you consider the VBA error handler as part of that, it's like, say it's like a tree. What's a reverse tree? I don't know. If you turn it upside down, and that's like the base of the trunk. And then you can hang things off it, but if you don't hang anything off it, then it's always that at least. You've always got the VBA error handler as a bare minimum.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you, Adrian.
Pleasure.
A few new little things there for us all to learn. It's amazing how, using this application Access for decades, decades and decades, well, 3 decades, and there's still
years at least.
And there's still fine little things that I don't know yet. So thank you very much.
I have to say I do too.
Yes. Hopefully see you all next month. Bye.